Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm Kirsten, and today I will explain about hazardous waste management practices in Australia. So, this is today's outline. So, I will start with explaining what is hazardous waste and why it's important to manage. According to UNEP, hazardous waste is any waste that has dangerous physical, chemical, or biological properties, like being inflammable, toxic, corrosive, or infectious, that require special handling and disposal to prevent harm to people and the environment. Therefore, managing hazardous waste properly is critical for three main reasons. First, open dams often attract pests and stray animals that spread disease and cause public health concerns. 2. Waste dumps often pollute water and soil, release harmful gases in the air, and risk explosion. Third, open dumps lower property values and harm community well-being, causing economic losses. This slide outlines the key regulation governing hazardous waste management in New South Wales and across Australia. At the state level, the Protection of the Environmental Operations Regulation 2005 defines what counts as hazardous waste and requires that hazardous waste undergoes treatment to reduce hazards before landfill disposal to protect the environment. The next one is the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, or EPBC Act, which plays a broader role by protecting nationally and internationally important flora, fauna, and heritage sites, so that waste activities cannot harm these sensitive areas. Meanwhile, at the national level, the Controlled Waste and EPM regulates how hazardous waste moves safely between states and territories to prevent illegal dumpings or unsafe transport. And lastly, the Hazardous Waste Regulation of Export and Imports Act puts into effect Australia's obligation under the Basel Convention, managing the import and export of hazardous waste to ensure meets international safety and standard. Next slide. According to the Waste Avoidance and Resource Recovery Act 2001, pollution should be prevented or reduced at the source whenever feasible. This isn't just a good practice, it lays out a clear priorities for using resources efficiently and reducing environmental harm. Prevention is always a priority. Reducing waste generation at its source is far more effective than trying to fix the problem afterwards. Only after prevention and minimization do we move down to recycling and reuse, which must be employed in an environmental safe manner whenever feasible. These are still important, but they come second in the hierarchy. Meanwhile, disposal or other release into the environment should be employed only as a last resort and should be conducted in an environmentally safe manner as well. So, according to hazardous waste management strategy, there are 7 stages of how to create a waste management system. However, in this slide, I will only explain the waste classification system and waste minimization program. So now I will discuss 6 principles of waste classification. First step, check if the waste is classified as a special waste. Next, check whether the waste is classified as liquid waste. Step 3. If the waste is not classified as special or liquid waste, check if it's on the list of pre-classified waste. Many common wastes have already been classified as hazardous, restricted solid, or general solid waste, putrescible or non-putrescible to simplify the process. Step 4. Check if the waste has certain hazardous characteristic and therefore is classified as hazardous waste. Step 5. If the waste is not classified after step 1 to 4, it should undergo chemical assessment. If it still is not classified after step 5, it must be treated as hazardous waste. Step 6. If at step 5, waste is classified as general solid waste, it can be further assessed to determine whether it is putrescible, non-putrescible, or biologically transformable. If no further assessment is done, it is classified as putrescible general solid waste. After learning the classification of hazardous waste in Australia, do you know how much hazardous waste generated annually? So in 2023, Australia generated 5.97 million tons of hazardous waste. That's the equivalent of 227 kilograms for every single person in the country. Where did it all go? About 42% was recycled, giving those materials second life. Meanwhile, a small fraction, only 2%, was used for energy recovery, but the majority, 56%, was disposal. Most of that went to landfill, along with 30,000 tons of medical waste that was incinerated for safety, and 3.8 thousand tons sent for other disposal methods. Looking back at those data, we know why it's necessary to track our hazardous waste. We need to know exactly where waste comes from, where it goes, and how it's treated. But tracking alone is not enough. We also need transparent public reporting. That's where the National Pollutant Inventory, or NPI, comes in. It doesn't just record waste, it makes data publicly available, giving communities, researchers, and policymakers the information they need to identify risks, target problems areas, and track progress over time. So, tracking pollution through the NPI is essential. First, to enhance environmental quality. Second, to increase public and industry understanding of types and quantities of toxic substances. Third, to encourage industry to adopt cleaner production techniques to reduce emission and waste generation. Fourth, monitor and track environmental progress. Five, meet the community's right to know obligation. Six, assist the government in identifying priorities for environmental decision making. So far, we have looked at how hazardous waste is generated and how it's managed, and why tracking and transparency to the NPI are vital. But the ultimate goal is not just to track waste, it's to create less of it in the first place. This is where waste minimization comes in. So, according to Blomqvist and Brown, waste minimization means prevention and or reduction in the generation of waste, the improvement in the quality of waste generated, including reduction of hazard, and the encouragement of reuse, recycling, and recovery. So, you might be wondering, how exactly is cleaner production achieved? Well, there are several practical approaches. First, we can use the waste audit method to analyze an organization waste stream. This gives us a clear picture of where waste is coming from and where we can cut it off at the source. Second, we can improve technology. For example, upgrading machinery or adopting cleaner production techniques can make our processes more efficient and reduce byproduct. Third, we can also identify and modify the services that create the demand for a certain products and, in turn, the waste those products generate. We can work on changing management attitude as well, because when leadership values waste prevention and resource efficiency, these priorities flow through the entire organization. And finally, we can involve communities, institutions, and regulatory arrangements. Cleaner production isn't just about technology, it's also about collaboration, engagement, and supportive policies. Together, these steps helps us move from the theory of cleaner production into real, on-the-ground change. Now, I will discuss waste audit, the first step towards cleaner production. So, how does a waste audit actually work? It's carried out in several clear steps. Step 1, gather background data, where means understanding the organization's operations, inputs, and existing waste record. Step 2, create a material balance, mapping what comes in and what goes out. Step 3, plan and conduct a site survey to see exactly how waste is generated on the ground. Step 4, performing waste sampling and analysis. This is where we physically sort, weigh, and categorize waste to get accurate figures. Step 5, finalize the material balance using the new data. Step 6, establish benchmark targets, setting realistic, measurable goals for improvement. And finally, step 7, develop a waste minimization program based on all those findings. To wrap up, effective hazardous waste management relies on a solid regulatory framework that clearly defines how waste should be handled and treated. The waste minimization hierarchy reminds us to prioritize prevention, reduction, and reuse before disposal. Cleaner production techniques combined with detailed waste audit provide the practical evidence and step organization need to cut waste at its source. While much effort focuses on managing waste after it's created, the greatest impact comes from preventing waste generation in the first place. Moving forward, strengthening laws, encouraging collaboration among government, industry, and communities, and using data-driven tools will be key to safer, more sustainable waste management. Thank you for listening, and these are my references.